Up to 20% of corporate CEOs are psychopaths. That's a lot of corporate psychopaths in the C-suite, but they're not alone, because as much as 1 in 25 corporate employees can also be diagnosed with psychopathy. Maybe you're not exaggerating when you talk about your psychopath boss. As a criminologist by education, psychopathy has always fascinated me. In my first year of studies, we learned about Robert Hare's Psychopathy Checklist. And just like how I used it to determine how my then boyfriend was in fact a psychopath, you can use it to see if you are working with a psychopath. I'm sure my lawyer is going to want this disclaimer on this video. The 7 signs of a psychopath at work I'm about to share with you are not designed to be a diagnostic tool. And of course, only a professional who is directly working with an individual has the ability to diagnose them. Quite honestly, this video is really just for fun. It gives me the chance to talk about psychopaths and relate my criminology degree to something useful. And who knows, maybe it'll make someone that you work with make a lot more sense to you. Before we do jump in today, I would love to hear in the comments below. Are you here because you think you're working with a corporate psychopath? Or is it just the intrigue of corporate psychopathy that brought you here? I know you're dying to find out the signs, but there are 3 things that you need to know about psychopaths in the workplace before we dive in. Don't skip ahead. You need to know these 3 things. First, not all psychopaths are serial killers. Tap the like button on this video if the first image that springs to mind when I say psychopath though is a slasher serial killer. Not all psychopaths are violent criminals. But Jennifer, aren't all psychopaths criminals? Stay to the end, because we're going to talk about that point. Second, researchers think that the number is so high, especially when it comes to the C-suite, because the traits that have historically been rewarded in corporate life, well, you're going to recognize a lot of them here. And the fact that corporate psychopathy is a reason for their success is something that we can totally unpack on another day. Finally, this is derived from Hare's Psychopathy Checklist. But the Psychopathy Checklist has a lot of items that you wouldn't necessarily have direct visibility to at work. Today, I am going to focus on the traits and the behaviors of the corporate psychopath that you would most likely see at work. If you do want to check out his full list though, I have linked it down below. Okay, I hope you made it through that, because now it's time for the signs of a corporate psychopath. The first sign of a psychopath at work is they are charming at least when they want to be. This is really a defining trait of a psychopath, and it serves the corporate psychopath really well. Have you ever worked with someone that was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Psychopaths can be incredibly charming and charismatic, such as when they're trying to make a sale or hire you to work at their company. Because they are in control of their charm, not everyone will see their dark side. In fact, you may even hear remarks like, "He would never do that." And I say he because while psychopathy is present in both genders, it is disproportionately prevalent in males at a ratio of about 20 to 1. But you can see how this helps the corporate psychopaths succeed. Their charismatic magnetism helps them get results, sales, investors, key hires. Quite honestly, their charm is the best part of the corporate psychopath, as long as they're using it for good and not evil. The second sign that you're working with a psychopath is they think they're really important. In psychology terms, we would call it delusions of grandeur. Their self-perception is disproportionately high. Sometimes the corporate psychopath's grandiosity is hilarious. Think about the office Chad who's been on the job and in the workforce for 6 months, but thinks he deserves the SVP job because he's so talented and so important. This can also be incredibly aggravating, like when Chad actually gets that promotion to SVP despite his lack of experience and qualifications. I've talked about this in videos before. Confidence is contagious. And the corporate psychopath's exaggerated sense of self-worth is exactly what causes other people to perceive them the same way. I know at this point you might be thinking the corporate psychopath doesn't sound so dangerous. But in the next sign, you're going to see how destructive and dangerous the corporate psychopath can really be. And that does bring us to the next sign that you are working with a corporate psychopath, and that is they are masters of manipulation. They'll say anything to get their way. Their disregard for others, which we're going to come back to in just a few minutes, coupled with their lack of relationship with the truth and their natural skill of deceptive persuasion, is what makes the corporate psychopath very dangerous. There are so many examples of this in the business news. Think the tech founder who deceives investors about their technology, or the sales rep who grossly misrepresents what a product actually does in order to land a 6-figure contract. To be fair to our corporate psychopath, the ability to manipulate isn't always a bad thing. In fact, persuasion is an important skill for career success, but the intention and means to manipulate a situation to get a favorable outcome, and who the outcome really benefits, is what what differentiates the corporate psychopath, especially when it's mixed with the next category of signs of psychopathy, which is best described as a deficiency in human feelings. Let me explain. Drawing from the last sign, when they lie and manipulate, they can do so because psychopaths have a complete lack of remorse. Guilt is something they just don't experience. Must be nice. Psychopaths also have what's called shallow affect, which means that they don't experience the same depth and breadth of emotions. For example, when your coworker announces her engagement and everyone is excited and joyful for her, the psychopath either has no emotion or has to pretend like they have an emotion and they just mimic what they're seeing everyone else do. Does that make sense? Because this is one that actually really trips up a lot of people. The other deficiency that the psychopath has is in the empathy department. Some will describe them as cold, others will notice their lack of tact. The corporate psychopath isn't going to understand the reason why you didn't reply to their email on the day that your mother died, why you need to work from home when your child is sick instead of just calling in the nanny, or why you struggled to make some of the decisions that need to be made in business. Before we move to the next sign, there is one more thing I wanted to talk just a little bit more about on this point, because I've seen so many professionals just spinning their wheels and doing something that the psychopath cannot do. In most cases, you cannot build a meaningful connection with a psychopath because the psychopath is shallow, their relationships tend to be shallow as well. So if you think you are working with a psychopath and you have been trying to establish a better relationship with them, know that that might be the thing that is actually hindering it and it has nothing to do with you. The next sign to help you spot a psychopath at work is that they have poor behavior controls. It's acting without thinking.
To the extreme.
The corporate psychopath also tends to be very impulsive. This can look like going from idea to action instantaneously without any consideration for implications or consequences. Amplifying this, psychopaths also have a tendency towards impatience and boredom. They require high levels of stimulation. No, not that kind of stimulation. They need to be thrilled and excited, which leads them to a lot of high-risk behavior. Does this sound like anyone you know? And the cherry on top of this is that they also tend to hastily react. If they're irritated, they cannot hide it. And this is where the psychopath's tendency towards different forms of aggression and even abuse really do come into play. Drawing from that, another sign you're working with a psychopath is they lack realistic long-term goals. Digging in, the first thing you'll find is their goals or expectations are, let's just call them what they are, absurd. The corporate psychopath wants to 3x revenue when you're struggling to get leads. They want wall-to-wall full media coverage for their product launch, even if no one has heard of them and there is no PR budget. This same person will struggle to set 5, 3, or even 1-year goals. And if they do write something down, it is soon abandoned, which, to be honest, sounds like standard protocol for goal setting in a lot of companies. But that's a whole other rant. So let's stay focused on our psychopath at work. The final sign that you work with a psychopath is their lack of responsibility. They are irresponsible and even reckless in their actions and in their decisions. And they totally lack any accountability. As you can imagine, this is not a good combination, taking into consideration all of the other qualities we just talked about. And if you work with a corporate psychopath, this can be particularly infuriating, especially when you're the person who ends up having to clean up all of their messes after them and then take heat for it. At this point, I know what you're thinking. Jennifer, psychopaths are criminals. My coworker has not been convicted of any crimes. Buckle up for this one because it's about to get real. The thing that we don't talk about is these people might be committing crimes at work. There's a whole world of white-collar crime, and the corporate psychopath is a key player in it. I know you're here to talk about workplace issues and career success, but there needs to be more awareness of this. White-collar crime is often committed by rich white men, who is both our archetype businessman and our archetype corporate psychopath. For some reason, crimes like fraud, insider trading, Ponzi schemes, and embezzlement are seen as victimless crime. You want to tell me Bernie Madoff didn't have any victims? The impact of corporate crime is extraordinary, and it can be catastrophic for victims who can number in the millions. It's rampant and widely unprosecuted. And that's actually what the corporate psychopath is proudest of. The psychopath boasts about the crimes that they commit and get away with. But it's not just that. We cannot ignore the violence that exists within workplaces. Discrimination, harassment, assault. Just because someone has a healthy paycheck, wears a suit to work, and has a fancy job title does not mean that they are not a criminal. And if there's one thing that we need to dramatically shift in our society right now, it's who we count as a criminal and who we don't. We can't care about this crime when we don't care about this crime. I try to end my videos on a positive note, but I just really don't know how to do that from here. I just know that this is what I needed to say today. And I apologize if you came here for the fun and identifying if you're working with a corporate psychopath or are you not. But we can't talk about workplace dysfunction without talking about the real dysfunction that exists. If you're in a workplace where there's toxicity, psychopathy, or things that are happening that aren't okay, there's options. If you need support, I'm in the comments, and if you hop over to my LinkedIn, my DMs are open. No matter what, I would really actually love for you to add your thoughts and your opinions into this conversation, no matter what they are. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.